Stage managers are responsible for so much during a production, like kind of a ridiculous amount, but how much do they get paid? My name is Kent, and this is your half-hour call.
Attention cast and crew, this is your half-hour call. Half hour to the top of the show. Half hour.
What is up, my friends, and welcome to a brand new series on Half-Hour Call called Let's Talk About Money, where we break down exactly what you need to know in order to be a financially healthy stage manager. This week we're talking about income, so stick around till the end of the video where I'll break down exactly what I made and from which projects in 2019, a full year of being a stage manager. But if you're new here, welcome! My name is Kent, and you are watching Half-Hour Call, where we're dedicated to shining the spotlight on technical theater, so if you like interviews with industry leaders, how-to videos, or general theater updates, make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss anything. But first, I need to ruin all of my credibility.
I'm not an expert in this. I'm not an accountant, I'm not a tax preparer, and I'm not a lawyer. Everything in this series is for informational purposes only, and you should always get professional financial advice from a sworn fiduciary before making any major decision.
The chaos of last year really inspired me to do my own research and become more intentional with my finances, and I very quickly realized how much I didn't know. So this series is that research compiled for you, as well as additional resources, information from experts that I've been able to talk to, and anecdotes from stage managers that I've taken surveys from. But why do we need to talk about money? Money is considered a rather taboo topic in America, with failing marriages and politics ranking as more favorable topics of polite conversation than money and finance. And this taboo creates major problems. Barely over half of Americans are considered financially literate, meaning they can answer a majority of questions about financial concepts like compound interest or inflation. And for young adults aged 18 to 35, that number drops to 17%. And with about 45% of millennials having student loan debt, they're being forced to participate in this system that they have not been informed about. I've seen jokes where people compare young adulthood to playing a video game where you've skipped the tutorial, and that's kind of accurate in a not exaggerated and not a joke way, except instead of willingly skipping the tutorial, you're not even offered the tutorial in the first place. Down in the description below, there is a link to a financial literacy test so you can see what I'm talking about and find out if you're in the 53% or the 17% of millennials. About 2/3 of Americans between 18 and 35 say that they have financial stress or anxiety. And about 75% of Americans admit to making a financial mistake, with the leading cause being a lack of information. And this is not a failure of an individual like you or me. This is a failure of our society as a whole, and the financial industry knows it, because they spend about 25 times more money on advertising than they do on education. And worst of all, only 10% of you have hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm, but fortunately this is one statistic that's easy to remedy. And no, I don't expect a single series on YouTube to make up for the failings of American capitalism, but at the very least, I hope that it gives you the tools that you need to be more intentional with the money that you do have. But in order to make informed and intentional decisions with your money, you have to first make some money, hopefully as a stage manager. This week, we're talking about income. Stage managing is typically gig-based work, meaning you'll have multiple contracts throughout the year that are shorter, a couple months at a time. You'll work for multiple employers, and you may have periods of unemployment in between contracts. This means that a stage manager's income can vary wildly within a year and from year to year, even in times where the industry doesn't completely shut down. So a lot of stage managers have several income streams, or multiple ways that they make money throughout a year. According to the 2019 Stage Manager Survey, only about 32% of stage managers make 100% of their income from stage management, so 68% of stage managers have some other type of income. Whether you call it an additional income stream, a survival job, or a side hustle, you'll probably need something in between those contracts in order to make ends meet. This is especially true for non-union stage managers, where only about 19% are able to make 100% of their income from stage management work. These income streams might be a delivery service like Postmates or Instacart, driving for Uber, online temp work, a YouTube channel, or even selling stage manager ducks, available now at kentjamescollins.com/store. Survival jobs deserve an entire video on their own, and it is on my list of things to create, but for now, just know that it is incredibly common, and needing a survival job to make ends meet does not make you any less of a stage manager. It's also worth mentioning that between contracts, you may be able to qualify for unemployment assistance, and that's about as detailed as I can get on that because the requirements for every state are so different, but it's something I would encourage you to look up. So how much do stage managers make from actual stage managing? Well, first we need to understand how stage managers earn money. Unlike a standard 9-to-5 job at a company, stage managers rarely measure their salary in years. And unless you're working at a theme park or perhaps a smaller contract, you probably won't measure your hourly wage either. For the most part, stage managers measure their salary weekly. And unless you're lucky enough to land a long-running Broadway show or a resident gig at a repertory theater, there are going to be gaps in employment. So we can't just take the weekly salary and multiply it by 52. According to the Actors Equity Association Diversity and Inclusion Report, the average weekly salary for stage managers is $862.65. According to an anecdotal survey that I took of stage managers that I know, the average stage manager works approximately 30 to 45 weeks out of the year. So with a little bit of math, the average full-time equity stage manager can expect to earn between $25,879 and $38,819 per year from just stage management work. But that's not really the whole picture, so let's look at the range of salaries for stage managers. I only have the exact numbers for the minimum salaries for different Actors Equity Association contracts, but this is the salary information from the 2019 Stage Manager Survey. Some things to note: equity salaries, which are in blue, pretty much start at the $500 to $750 block, while the non-union salaries, which are in green, which presumably include internships, community theater, and educational stage managers, in addition to the non-union professional theaters, have a much wider range. These are the current equity weekly salary minimums for contracts that are used nationwide. The lowest weekly salary is the assistant stage manager for Tier 1 small professional theaters at $294 per week. The highest weekly salary is the stage manager for a production or Broadway contract musical at $3,687 per week. These numbers do not include per diems, which are generally provided when you are either on tour or at a theater that does not provide housing with a full kitchen. Per diems can vary just as widely as salaries can, but for a production musical tour, such as the Hamilton tour, the minimum per diem is $980 per week, bringing the total weekly compensation up to $4,667. And all of these are minimums. You can absolutely negotiate for more, although I will tell you about half the stage managers I surveyed have never negotiated for above minimum salary, but many had negotiated for other things, whether that be better housing conditions, or travel expenses being reimbursed, or time off, or anything like that. And of course, we have to talk about internships. Internships are a whole other ball game. The highest paid internship that I have seen off the top of my head is around $300 a week, including housing, and the lowest paid requires you to pay them for the opportunity to provide them with free labor. So there's that. Some provide housing with utilities, some provide meals, some provide absolutely nothing except for the willingness to sign a piece of paper for a college credit that then you still have to pay for. The biggest thing to ask about for internships, other than the pay, which should be included in the job description, if it's not, that's kind of a red flag, would be the housing conditions, extra duties, overtime or maximum number of hours, and whether or not they have any formal mentorship or masterclass opportunities. But most importantly, when it comes to internships, do not let theaters use EMC or equity membership candidacy points as a bargaining chip or an excuse to pay you less than your labor is worth. Participation in the EMC program for the theaters that qualify is completely free. It is costing them nothing to sign your piece of paper. It is the union that is providing you the points. It is Actors Equity Association that is providing you those points. It is not the theater providing you those points. It costs them nothing, unless they decide to pay the $200 entrance fee for you, but I've not heard of that happening. If I talk about pay for interns any more than I already have, I'm gonna get very angry, so I'm going to stop. But stick around and subscribe to the channel, because I'm sure I'll talk about it more in the future. So what does this income fluctuation look like in the context of a full season or an entire year? Well, for me, back in 2019, I had a very full season. I was very fortunate to get a lot of work in 2019, where I only had about 2 weeks of time where I wasn't either working or traveling to work. I also happened to go from being an intern to being an equity stage manager within the course of that year, so you can see the entire range of what my salaries looked like. All told, in 2019, I made $25,386 with $3,500-ish in deductions, so when combined with the standard deduction, I had a taxable income of $9,646. We'll get into all of that later, but the most important point for right now is that I made $25,386 of gross income in 2019. Also, I just wanted to be able to say that I released my tax returns before Donald Trump. So job number one, for the first 5 months of 2019, January through May, I was an intern at the Florida Repertory Theater in Fort Myers, Florida. They provided housing with utilities, and I was paid $175 a week. Fun fact, at the end of this internship, I covered the equity stage manager for the show I was working on for one show so she could go watch her daughter graduate from high school. I shadowed her calling for one performance, she watched me call the show for one performance, and then I called by myself for one performance, and then she came back. But because according to equity rules, only the equity stage manager can call the cues for a show, I had to be put on a temporary replacement equity contract for those 2 shows that I called. And in those 2 shows, I made more money than the rest of the whole week. All told, I made $3,377 at Florida Rep. At the same time, I made just over $1,200 from a part-time job I had at a family-owned escape room in Orlando. So on my 1 day off a week from my internship, I would drive from Fort Myers, Florida, 3 hours up to Orlando to work for 12 hours to then turn around and drive 3 hours back. I do not recommend this. The only reason I did it was because I loved that part-time job and I really wanted to keep it because they were so flexible and so kind. After that, I packed up my life into my little Toyota Yaris and drove up the coast to Williamsburg, Virginia, where I worked at Busch Gardens Williamsburg for about 5 months. So from June to November, early November. As a stage manager for Busch Gardens Williamsburg, I made $15.91 an hour and worked an average of 60 hours a week. Yes, you heard me right. 60 hours a week. For the Nighttime Summer Spectacular, I worked about 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. And then for their Halloween event, I worked about 14 hours a day, 4 days a week. That works out to around $955 a week, which is to date the highest weekly salary I have had. And including some incentive bonuses like Wawa gift cards, I made a total of $18,176 at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. I just want to point out that I worked approximately the same amount of time at my internship as I did at Busch Gardens, and at one of them I made just shy of $4,000, and at the other one I made about $18,000, so... Then I drove across the entire country from Virginia to California in 3 days to work at Sacramento Theater Company as an equity assistant stage manager for their remount of A Christmas Carol. Sacramento Theater Company is on a letter of agreement amending the League of Resident Theaters agreement, so they pay $706 a week plus a bump in tech week and overtime pay for any weeks where we had more than 8 performances. In total, I made $5,795. So these are all the different weekly salaries that I made as a stage manager, going from intern all the way to equity stage manager, and that led to this annual salary or total amount of income for 2019. And that is how much stage managers make. Be sure to like this video and don't forget to subscribe for part 2 of the series, Let's Talk About Money. My name is Kent, and this has been your half-hour call.
This snazzy feathered production assistant, as well as other cool stage management merchandise, is now available at kentjamescollins.com/store. Link in the description below.